Ready to go, Zachary?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, good morning and welcome on this second day of Martin Luther King Weekend of Service, Building the Beloved Community. I am so honored and excited to introduce Zachary Johnson, who has been my friend for a while from the Teilhard Desjardins page. And Zachary is a devoted student of history. And when I say that, you know, we have a tendency to look to the scholars for all of our learning. And Zachary has really spent so much of his heart and his mind, used it to really study history in a really deep and thoughtful way. And when I reviewed his pictorial history of the past and future shadow history of the United States that he published last year, I was just blown away by the depth of study that he's engaged in. And so he's taking that on to a new shore. And I think it fits in so beautifully with our theme here on this weekend, when we're really building the scaffolding to bring Martin Luther King's dream into reality. So Zachary will be talking about his new podcast that he's going to be starting to support the work that he'll be introducing us to this morning. So Zachary, I invite you to take us away.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for that introduction. And I am a 67-year-old granddad from Milwaukee. Was so happy to be here. I actually put my pants on this morning. I don't always do that with room chat, but if everything goes according to plan, and we are going to adjust because our group is so small this morning. But I would be honored to share what we have so far and sharing the living spirit of the beloved community. As Annie said earlier, there'll be 3 parts to the program. I'll open up each phase with a brief overview on PowerPoint, and then we'll turn the discussion back over to Annie, who will lead the discussion and unmute our microphones when we raise our hands to ask a question. Now, because the group is small, we will adjust for time, because initially it's been broken down into 3 30-minute sections, but we'll just improvise and do what makes everybody comfortable. So thank you all so much for being here. And we invite everyone to speak their minds freely and share their opinions and offer their feedback, which is what will make this actually successful. So I'm gonna go to screen share and we can get started. It says my screen share has been disabled by the host.
It's been what?
Disabled.
Disabled.
Yeah, host does disabled participant screen sharing.
Annie, you can make Zachary a co-host.
Okay, yes. That needs to happen. All right.
Okay. See what happens. Okay, good. Okay, there it is. Now, we did a dry run last night, and one of the suggestions was that I turn off my camera so that people wouldn't be distracted by me reading. So I'm gonna go to PowerPoint and go to the first slide. Okay. Now, as Andy just mentioned, I am the author of the Pictorial Guide to the Past and Future Shadow History of the United States. It is currently available at Amazon.com. The entire book is 279 pages long, and it just so happens to come in at the same price as the medium pepperoni pizza from Pizza Hut. Now, the Shadow History covers a wide range of very interesting subjects, as you can plainly see from the pictures. And while it almost took 3 years to put the whole thing together, it was an absolute labor of love in every sense of the term, because those years literally flew by. For this morning's Beloved Community Celebration, anyone attending this workshop here today who has a sincere interest will be able to get a free PDF copy of the living history just by sending a written request through the message button that we have encircled at the very top of the American Heals Facebook page. Now, of course, we don't have to worry if we don't have a pencil right this minute. As we know, we are being recorded, so anyone that doesn't have a pencil can come back and get the address later. I just wrote that in, but hopefully if you get the book, if you like it enough, you'll eventually order your own copy from Amazon.com and tell other people about it as well. So I actually finished the book in 2017, but because Oprah never did call me about coming down to do a show on her book club, I had to come up with a way to get the word out, which, to make a long story short, ultimately led to the creation of the Living Experiment in Nonviolence YouTube channel that, in addition to promoting the shadow history, has literally developed into an interactive grassroots research hub, and which, over the course of the last 2 years, has sincerely set out to discover, one, the farthest extreme limits of just exactly how healthy the human body is able to come, along with two, how much joyful happiness the human heart is able to generate from within, as well as three, just exactly what are the farthest extreme limits of loving kindness that human beings are capable of expressing towards one another. And also, just so happens, the world's busiest airport prominently displays a powerful photographic exhibit called The Legacy of a Dream, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has been made accessible to the nearly 90 million passengers who fly through Atlanta every year. The exhibit allows these travelers to closely observe dramatic displays of historic events surrounding the Montgomery boycott in 1955, all the way up to the climatic voting rights campaign in 1965 and beyond. It also reveals rarely seen personal memories, such as Dr. King playing football with his sons in the backyard of the family home. Now, the fourth panel of the exhibit displays an especially touching image of the King family having dinner along with the portrait of Mohandas K. Gandhi hanging over the doorway. And even more importantly, the very same panel displays Dr. King's personal copy of the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi that had been edited by Peter Sorokin. Now, Peter Sorokin was a Russian-born politically persecuted refugee of the Communist Revolution who immigrated to the United States in 1923. 10 years later, president of Harvard personally traveled to Minnesota in order to convince this internationally famous scholar to establish the Department of Sociology at his university. And shortly after Gandhi was assassinated in 1948, the government of India came to Peter Sorokin and asked him to help organize Mahatma's personal papers that ran all the way back to his late 19th century civil rights campaign in South Africa. While Albert Einstein, whose final public act called for the complete ending of all wars, drew heavily on academic research put forth by Peter Sorokin. And it just so happens, research parameters laid out for the entire living experiment in nonviolence basically draw on Professor Sorokin's 552-page masterpiece called The Weight and Power of Love. Now, if you go to the Living Experiments YouTube channel, you can view a brief 24-minute video that fully details Professor Sorokin's most important ideas, as well as just exactly how we hope to apply those ideas in our future efforts. So here we have a dramatic quote from page 7 of The Weight and Power of Love. It starts out by asserting that love is basically not an emotional, but ontological power, because love represents the most basic, quintessential essence of life itself. The subsequent chapters of the book also went on to declare that altruistic love represents the most natural source of a high-frequency energy force that can be very intentionally generated, consciously controlled, and intelligently directed towards specific practical purpose in the very exact same way that we channel electrical steam and or nuclear power. And also, quite fortunately, the very same opening chapter also goes on to claim that unlike the lower frequency sources of energy, the universal source of the supreme force is infinite, as we can clearly see from the quote on page 12. It claims altruistic love is a form of energy that is almost inexhaustible, and energy that sometimes actually grows through its expenditure. Thus, the more love expends itself, the stronger it becomes. Which ultimately tells us that there is no sound scientific reason that the properly controlled and intelligently directed flow of altruistic love power could not be built up into a highly stable energy field that completely permeates every aspect of daily life throughout a given area. In the very same way it's represented here in Salvador Dali's artistic masterpiece, that had actually been strongly influenced by the revolutionary teachings of the great scientific philosopher priest, whose highly advanced ideals will serve as the primary central focus for our next session. And so that being said, we'll close out this opening session by posing a question to the group. So here we have a chart on the screen that shows us a wide array of the most challenging social problems menacing our society today. But in the Living Experiments Unified Field Approach to Social Service Delivery, only sees one problem that poses the most important question for our opening discussion. Because since we now understand that love represents the most basic fundamental essence of life itself, which one of the heartbreaking conditions represented in this picture could not be vastly improved, if not completely healed over, through an intelligently controlled direct infusion of the life-giving power of love? And even more importantly, which one of these conditions could ever possibly hope to be resolved without the life-giving power of love for love's sake? So that's the end of part 1. I'm gonna close out the screen share. And turn on my video. And hopefully we can just have a brief discussion for a minute. Since there's only a few of us, we don't have to do it for 30 minutes.
Who do we have here? Is that?
Yeah, that's my phone.
Okay, good. So.
Oprah's calling.
Right? That was beautiful. Thank you, Zachary. Well, yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I want to share. I mean, my heart is, I mean, lately over the past 4 to 6 weeks, I kind of feel like my heart is, if it were liquid, it's just poured out all over the place in every moment right now, and I'm reconfiguring. That's the best way I can describe the sensations in my body, and listening to you. And even though I sort of had, you know, quickly gone through your YouTube before, and as you were sharing and hearing in your voice, and just this common theme, you know, since I've known as a child, love. Like love is all we need. Love is the answer. Love is here. And just as when you were saying, the more love expands itself, and I almost don't have words. I want to share and I don't have the words because I'm feeling it so intently, and where we are with this particular convergence and building beloved community, and some of the conversations that happened yesterday, and the reality of what's happening in our world and how people are being treated. And then being this advocate for, yes, love is this power that will change it. And so I know for me throughout this weekend, there's so many questions because right here, and just in what you said, like, even if you didn't continue your presentation, I feel like you just gave solutions to how we shift our world into unity. And they've been here for a long time, because your teacher, you know, Teilhard de Chardin, which I learned of from Annie mostly, like more intimately of his works a couple months ago, he's been saying this for years. So I guess that's my share, is I'm in the inquiry and I can feel what you're saying in my heart so powerfully. And I can see that we have these constructs to get there, and we're still not there.
As a matter of fact, Teilhard will be the focus of the next session. Lauren, are you saying something? I saw your light come on.
I'm just listening for now.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here this morning. So, is there any more feedback?
Well, my thought was, thank you, Karen, first of all, for your heartfelt sharing there. Absolutely. I had reviewed Zachary's work again recently, and he's just always working it up. It was beautifully presented, Zachary, just there. And LOVE has just been in some sense, overused in a way. It's lost its potency as a word, but it's our most fundamental power. And excuse me, I just see how, as you put those issues up there at the end, Zachary, just looking over all of those and just saying, what's driving us away from love is trauma.
Absolutely.
My background is with children, and all the ways that gets shut down. Their natural, normal impulse to love and to be an altruistic love. Okay, they're children, but the way children are so open to justice and rightfulness. I love when there's a conflict between two children and we have them speak to one another about it. whichever one, actually had the thing first, that's the usual thing, right? They're tussling over something. Well, I had it first. And, they're both telling me that they had it first. And I'm saying, okay, speak to one another. As soon as they speak to one another and look one another in the eye, the one who actually didn't have it first just hands it right over. And they're all good,
Wow.
I mean, that is the foundation of altruistic love, is to really communicate with one another, and to practice that as children. And yet, how many of us had that opportunity because well-meaning adults in our lives took over the power for us and tried to mediate that kind of thing and didn't allow us to begin to develop that. And that's just one little example, but I was just struck by all the ways that we're traumatized as children and not being able to develop our fundamental connection to nature and all of the above. But wow, beautiful. Thank you for that. And I feel like that was your introduction. So look forward to hearing part 2.
Well, Tux had his hand up for a minute.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. So, thank you. I'm feeling profound gratitude for having been moved to register to be here this morning with you and presencing in presence. This is a very sacred moment, I feel, and I'm moved by the presentation of Brother Zachary. I'm also very enthusiastic that your daughter is attending. I myself, I'm a father of 4 grown-up daughters and also grandfather of 4 young children, grandchildren, who happen to be my greatest teacher. Now, Brother Zachary, what your pictorial guide that you've graciously offered us this morning in PDF is, I feel, is going to be instrumental to moving many to better appraise the need for a fundamental shift in how we present in life. Now, Annie touched on the word LOVE, love. I'm soulfully moved right now to testify to you. We are in a very small group, an intimate group, and I'm going to just allow myself to express my vulnerabilities, you can say. But we need to get to being authentic with each other as spiritual beings having a human experience. If we want to foster beloved communities, and I say beloved communities in the plural, because communities have to exist wherever there's a group of people who want to come together to better their lives, to ensure peaceful prosperity for generations present and future. If we want to foster, to cultivate, to nurture beloved communities, we need to really look at the word beloved. Before we get to be beloved, we have to be loved, and we have to, I think we have to really presence even in silence. Yesterday in the opening session, Dr. Maver presented us with the power of silence. we need to silence and to maybe listen to the still small voice. And really, Brother Zachary mentioned Gandhi and the effect that Gandhi had on Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, Gandhi says we need to be the change we wish to see in the world. If we want a more caring, a more loving world, we have to start by ourselves. It may sound very basic, very grand, you know, like everyone is so busy structuring financial, new financial facilities for people to acquire. Now, I'm in Quebec, and I'm originally from the Seychelles Island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And I've been blessed maybe to not have had the experience of living these atrocious years of the United States, and how my African brothers and sisters have been so maligned, so ill-treated. And yet, I think there is hope. As I say, I mean, I listen, for example, to non-sighted singers, and they make us see just by how they sing, the music they play. And I think a lot of times we're in a state now where victims will have to save the perpetrators. And all this clinches around love. I also want to mention, lastly, that I've had the opportunity to meet in the past Honorable Douglas Rush, a venerable Canadian of 91 years old, full of spirit, full of intellectual acuity, who's just published a new book, Recovery, Peace Prospects in the Biden Era. At the time when he was a senator, he did meet with Senator Biden back a couple of decades ago. So I've posted on our timeline links to that. And I would encourage Brother Zachary to send Honorable Douglas Rush a copy of his book, Pictorial Guide to the Past and Future Shadow History of the U.S. I thank you all, and I am blessed to be here with you this morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tex. We feel blessed to share with you this morning, having come so far. I just think my daughter and I talk about all the time how wonderful technology is today. And here we are in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, but yet we're all sitting in our living rooms, comfortably sharing each other's wonderful company. And I feel so blessed and happy to be here with you this morning. So having said that, in response to what Brother Albert just said in terms of the suffering people of color experience here in America, Dr. King frequently said that unredeemed suffering bears merit, and that there is no higher honor that the universe can offer than the opportunity to suffer for others. So, as Gandhi said, this suffering must not be allowed to become bitterness. And our task is to channel these lessons into service. And that's why I'm so happy my daughter's here, because she's learning. We frequently share our thoughts. And I'm constantly telling her, that there's a bigger picture, that we see things a certain way when we're young, but as we get older, we do begin to see a context on why there's so much injustice in the world, what appears to be injustice. So why don't we go to part 2 and then we can pick up on the discussion. So I'm going to go back to screen share. I'm going to shut my camera down again. Okay. You all just going to have to watch me read because I don't see the control here. This is only the second time we've done this, so we're learning, we're getting the kinks out. And I don't mind, since this is an intimate group, it's okay if you watch me read. That was one of the things they brought up when we went through the read through last night. They said, when I'm just reading from the page, it's kind of a distraction. But since I can't find the control right now,
we see the first slide, Zachary. We do see the first slide. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Well, you can also see me.
Zachary, we can stop your video. I think you're, hold on one sec there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
There you go.
That's what we want. Okay.
Perfect. Doing wonderful.
We got to work together. You know, that's what's so great. So, few public figures have had a greater impact on human history than the internationally renowned scientist, priest, paleontologist, and highly controversial social commentator who called himself the Pilgrim from the future. While the life of Teilhard de Chardin appears to represent one of the great 20th century tragedies, in many of the most redeeming ways, the ideas and teachings he left behind have already laid a firm foundation for the brightest tomorrows the human family could ever hope for. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was only 18 years old when he began his training with the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church. But the highly adventurous life he lived eventually furnished the primary model for the fictional archaeologist and heroic destroyer of dark forces who suffered and died for others. William Peter Blatty's dramatic 1971 novel, blockbuster cinematic adaptation, eventually went on to generate $1.8 billion in box office revenues. But perhaps the final full measure of Teilhard de Chardin's scientific stature will be reflected in the fact that the most highly influential paleontologist of the 20th century immortalized his contributions to human knowledge by naming an entire family of early prehistoric primates after him. Now, de Chardin became one of the first serious scientists to adopt the prehistoric worldview of the earliest ancient cultures that imagined a living universe completely permeated by the spirit of teeming life, after he publicly declared that there is neither matter or spirit in the world. All that exists is matter becoming spirit. Matter becoming spirit. Now, back in the early 1920s, when Teilhard first declared the dust of the ground has just as much intrinsic value as human flesh, his ideas were unceremoniously dismissed by the entire scientific community, while the religious authorities of the day ended up taking away his teaching privileges and directly ordered him not to publish the final results of his research. He also found himself assigned to the farthest, most isolated duty assignments the established powers could think of. Nevertheless, there's a second short video on the Living Experiment YouTube site, primarily focuses on the closely related scientific advances that took place after Teilhard's passing. Now, de Chardin was an anthropologist whose most important research was deeply rooted in the earth. But the strongest support of his ideas would emerge 50 long years after he expressed them. And it would come from the totally unrelated research field at the exactly opposite end of the scientific block that so loudly declared, ultimately, the entire universe has to be understood as a single, undivided whole. So now, just before we wrap up this section and open up the floor to our second discussion, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce that one of the things that I'm very excited about in 2021 is a very special joint workshop series celebrating the 140th birthday of T.R. Desjardins with this morning's host. And one of the things Annie and I share in common is that we both believe in preparation and patience. So we've given ourselves 3.5 months to polish up our acts because we both want to do the very best job we can, which leads us to close out our second section with the inspirational words from T.R. Desjardins' dramatic declaration of spiritual independence, whose revolutionary vision of an unchained and happily unbound, freestanding human family was originally considered to be so notoriously dangerous that it still continues to be officially banned by the highest authorities of the church down to this very day. So we quote, "A human energy, being the expression of a movement as irresistible and infallible as the universe itself, cannot possibly be prevented by any obstacle from freely reaching the natural goal of its evolution. Therefore, despite all checks and all improbabilities, we are inevitably approaching a new age in which the world will throw off its chains and at last give itself up to the power of its inner affinity. Now, either we must doubt the value of everything around us, or we must utterly believe in the possibility, and I should now add, in the inevitable consequences of universal love." So, I'm going to stop the share, and we can just briefly reflect. So I love that declaration. Okay. Any thoughts?
Tex has his hand up. Tex, you want to go ahead and start this time?
Okay, thank you. Again, Brother Zachary, thank you very much for this introduction to this section. I have to tell you very candidly, all of you, that I was only 17 years back in Seychelles in my third year secondary when a tourist who passed through Seychelles befriended me, and upon getting to London, sent me a gift of Teilhard's book, Le Milieu Divin. And along with that book was also Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. At that time, I was in a small seminary to become a Catholic priest. The two books did not move me along to become a Catholic priest. It rather started fundamental questions in me, essentially about living the gospel which I had been listening to all my youth, really, going to Mass every Sunday and then going to Mass every morning for years. And especially since I was the eldest of 6 at the time, and often at the age of, 3 months to be 6, when my father died in a car accident. We were 5 and a 6th one was on the way, born a few months after. My mother, a very strong woman, was a nurse, and anyway, we thrived as a family. She's now still living at 85 in Australia, where I have 3 brothers. And so anyway, getting back to Teilhard. Now, I can tell you, and I'm going to just be brief now because I can be very lengthy, that be it through my life as a son, as an elder brother, life as a citizen in Seychelles, and Seychelles at the time was a colony. And we moved on to become an independent nation with barely 65,000 people in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Seychelles became a republic relatively peacefully under coalition government. And eventually I got quite involved in the national government of Seychelles as a civil servant. Even involved in international relations. So I had ambitions that we would be building a very model society for the size that we were. But all this had its deceptions. And I ended up here as a refugee in 1988 with my wife and three daughters. And we got a fourth one after a while here. Anyway, they say behind every great man, there's a greater woman. I'm still hoping to be very great one day, having had 4 or 5. Anyway, to say that it's the first time that I'm feeling that I found kindred spirit. I've had very loving relationships, and I still have. It's through the love of my children and grandchildren. I'm probably still an optimist, but it's the first time that I feel I'm coming to a minimum of a critical mass of people who are moved to bring about the changes in society, because we are ourselves doing our utmost best with benevolence, with propriety, to be presencing in presence, and to be a channel and an instrument of our Creator, Father and Mother God. Thank you very much.
Love is very powerful, is a very powerful presence. And I'm touched by the presence we're sharing this morning. And I can't say thank you enough for being here this morning and making yourselves vulnerable and sharing and showing who you are. The only thing I regret is I forgot to ask Annie to bring her bell. She has a wonderful bell that she rings when we do meditations as a group. And had I known that we were going to have such a powerful energy in the room, we would have brought the bell and done our own brief moment. Since this group is so small, that would have worked out really great. But you live and learn, so we'll notice from now on. Oh, John's here.
And I think Karen had a comment as well.
Okay.
I just
Hi,
quickly,
Ingrid. That's actually Ingrid.
Oh, hi, Ingrid.
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you, Tex, for sharing that. And I know that I'm with you and I feel your heart. I don't have exactly, I tried to jot down what you said, Zach, the quote, either we doubt everything, this is what I got from it, either we doubt everything around us or utterly believe in the possibility. And that just completely speaks to the truth of who I've always been as a child, and the space I'm holding in my heart throughout this entire conference, throughout everything that's happening. And maybe learning how to not hide that, but maybe not always say it with my words, just simply live it, like sort of when Tex said, living the gospel, living the word. So that is so powerful to me. I wanted to say welcome to Stephen. And I think Ingrid might have also jumped in to see if we wanted support to go live on Facebook. And Annie and I had just chatted back for a moment there earlier. Really, Zach, that's up to you. We were saying it's kind of an intimate group right now. Ingrid can get us live up on Facebook, or we can stay as we are.
That would be fine if we can do that, because there is one more section, and there would be room for a few more minutes of discussion. So if we can go live, that would be terrific.
Okay, then we need to flip and make me the host real quick, and I'll do the back behind the scenes stuff. And I'm gonna take my video out, and then as soon as I get you guys live, I'm gonna go ahead and pass off the host. Who am I gonna be passing it to? Just to be clear, Annie is.
Yeah, so she signed in as John, so Annie, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I will pass it back to Annie, and then I need to leave, but we're gonna get you going. Zachary, thank you so very much, and thank you all for jumping in here to make this work. Okay.
And thank you for your
Ingrid,
support.
thank you so much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
So we're gonna have to keep talking until she gets
Yes.
done.
Yeah, I will come back on and give you all a warning when it's ready to go live. And actually, you'll probably see a thing that says like it'll say preparing for Facebook live stream, and then it'll let you know. And then you guys will probably want to make an announcement. Okay, we're live now. But I'm just going to keep my video off and everything. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
So I suppose we have to keep the conversation going for a minute.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share?
Well, my thought kind of taking off to a different direction here a bit, but in a sense, obviously it all goes together, but the way that Teilhard brought in from the scientific viewpoint, if you will, this, and which you brought together there, Zachary, very well, how science is supporting this, and how more and more this philosophical, if you will, idea or moral idea of love being the driving energy of human interaction, which is kind of where it has been left, is getting a far greater and more powerful vision for itself, if you will, to say that we don't really have a way to explain gravity. And by the way, what is it that brought the quarks together and all that, and what is dark matter? So, as these mysteries have been proven themselves to be unsolvable in some sense, but yet they have effects that we can readily see. Science has more and more started to really not just support, but to integrate with our understanding of who we are and why we're here. And Teilhard, of course, was the one who really articulated that bringing together of those two worlds, if you will. And that's so much of our we're not meant to be split. It's just like the masculine and feminine that we carry, the left and right brain, if you will. In some sense, you could say it's sort of that bringing together to understand. And when we're talking about the beloved community, it begins here, it begins with relationship to self and understanding that I'm not some kind of split self, or I'm meant to just be one side or the other, because I'm female. So, I'm all this over here. But to just see how it's all one, as your teaching there brought out very nicely. So
Well, actually,
Lauren has her hand up too, Zachary. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Lauren has her hand up, it looks like. Oh, no, that's me. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm learning here.
We're all learning. Carl Jung used to say, Carl Jung, the founder of modern of psychology. He used to say our Western concept of I is a recent concept in history, that originally the human family did not think of itself in terms of an individual I or you or me. You were part of the greater whole, and there was no separation between individuals in the way they set their societies up. So I think we're coming full circle. I think our teachings plays a tremendous role in us realizing that eventually, he claimed that eventually we were going to evolve into a higher type of super being. She says, okay. She's
Yeah.
ready. Okay, good.
All right. Well, welcome everyone from Facebook. And we're going to head into part 3 of Zachary's presentation here.
Okay, good. And I'd like to say welcome to everybody at Facebook as well. We've been having a wonderful conversation this morning, and you got here just in time for the final part. It's going to come up on the screen. Okay. Karen, you want to cut my camera off again?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Am I still on?
There you go.
Oh, okay, okay, good.
You're good.
Okay. The final presentation of our workshop open up by declaring that your name is really Trintab. We call ourselves Annie, Tex, Steve, Lauren, and Zachary. But in reality, as we just mentioned, this is who we are really a trim tab, which will make more sense as we go along in the workshop. I don't know why the screen is not moving. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share and reboot the program. I'm glad it's a small group here. Okay, I'm gonna try it again. Okay. Okay. And so we've learned that rather than being a sentimental ideal, Dr. King's vision of the beloved community precisely reflects one of the deepest primal urges of the human family, because the psychological need for the purest forms of high frequency altruistic love for love's sake has literally been hardwired into the deepest levels of our DNA. So the book that set this entire discussion in motion refers to a past and future shadow history, because past patterns frequently cast their shadows forward in a way that tells us, even in spite of the contrary appearances of the present moment, the United States of America has been unmistakably destined to play the central, crucially critical role in bringing about the final realization of the beloved community on behalf of the human family. Because, among other things, the United States is the only nation in all the annals of history to win a major war and then have the leading figures of that war turn around and publicly call for a complete ban on the international practice of organized war itself. Now, Dwight D. Eisenhower was the supreme commander in chief of the D-Day operation that determined the final outcome of the Second World War. But after he went on to become the 34th president, his most famous speeches consistently denounced the burdens of war while characterizing the barbaric practice of politically organized violence in terms of the entire human family being hung from a hell-bound cross of iron. The Bradley tank played such a critical strategic role in winning the Second War, was named after Omar Nelson Bradley, the legendary five-star hero, went so far as to claim wars can be prevented, just as surely as they can be provoked. And it is we who fail to prevent it who must share in the guilt for the dead. While the big in life commander of the Pacific Theater, who ended the Second World War by formally accepting the unconditional surrender of the Japanese Empire on behalf of the United States, openly declared that he believed the entire effort of modern society should be concentrated on the endeavor to outlaw war as a method of the solution of problems between nations. So, knowing what we now know, we will close out this morning's program with a little known chapter from the life of the great American hero we've gathered here to honor today. Now, most of the public generally knows the fiery sermons Dr. King preached during the final year of his life played a major role in shifting public opinion on the Vietnam War. But most of the public has no idea regarding the little known fact that 32 years later, on December 8, 1999, it would only take 12 Memphis jurors 3 short hours to reach the unanimously guilty verdict in the wrongful death lawsuit filed on behalf of Martin Luther King's family. And most unfortunately, the hard cold facts emerging from the trial openly declared that the planet's most famous apostle of love had been violently assassinated as the final result of a vast right-wing conspiracy that far more likely than not involved active duty participants from Army intelligence, the FBI, and CIA, along with organized crime figures from New Orleans and Memphis, which leads to the perfectly logical conclusion that rather than dying at the hands of a mentally deranged lone wolf assassin, an overwhelming mountain of indisputable evidence offers up undeniable proof of the fact that Martin Luther King had been the primary target of a major military operation that spread out over 7 states and involved at least 250 active duty personnel who invested 17,000 hours into the domestic surveillance of the Bible-toting Baptist preacher whose only real crime involved teaching his followers to love their enemies and turn the other cheek. Now, the lawyer who filed the historic Memphis lawsuit actually wrote 3 books about the King assassination over the years. But the most stunning revelation came from the final shocking work that claimed Martin Luther King was still alive when he arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital, and that he was actually murdered by a local doctor who was supposed to be saving his life. Eyewitness testimony was provided to William Pepper by a man named Jonathan Shelton, whose mother had been a surgical aide at the hospital that night. Shelby told Pepper the story of how his mother came home the morning after the shooting and gathered the family together. And he vividly remembers her saying to them, "I can't believe they took his life." She also described how the chief of surgery entered the emergency room with 2 men in suits. And after seeing the doctors working on King, forcibly commanded everyone to stop working on the nigger and let him die. Now, all of you get out of here right now. Everybody get out. So, for the sake of good taste and propriety, I will not go into the sickening, stomach-turning descriptions of the unspeakable cruelty that was supposedly perpetrated on Dr. King's body during his final tragic passage through the valley of the shadow of death that he had seen with his own eyes many years earlier. But we will close out this morning's workshop with the life-giving vision of the highly acclaimed American inventor who published more than 30 books over the course of his lifetime. Now, the following quote from Buckminster Fuller originally appeared in the 1972 interview that Barry Farrell conducted for Playboy magazine, which he said, "Something hit me very hard once, thinking about what one little man could do. Think of the Queen Mary. The whole ship goes by, and then comes the rudder. There's a tiny thing at the edge of the rudder called a trim tab. It's actually a miniature rudder. It's moving the little trim tab, builds a low pressure that pulls the rudder around. Takes almost no effort at all. So I said the little individual can be a trim tab. Society thinks it's going right by you, that it's left you all together. But if you're doing dynamic things mentally, fact is, you can just put your foot out like that, and the whole big ship of state is going to go. So I said, call me trim tab. So every single thought, word, and deed growing out from the living experiment in nonviolence has ultimately been designed around the long-term goal of bringing about the final absolute end of the morally redundant and socially obsolete practice of politically organized warfare. Because there's no place for war in the spirit-filled living universe that science has shown us. And as we also learned earlier, there's no force in heaven or earth able to resist the inevitable emergence of the coming kingdom of peace, whereby the lion will finally lay down with the lamb, because these things have been hardwired at the very deepest levels of our DNA. To that end, we hope to spend the balance of our remaining time discussing the living experiment's online petition to ban all wars, which you can find and hopefully sign by going to change.org/peace among nations, or by clicking the sign up button at the very top of America Heals Facebook page. But before we hand the discussion back to our moderator, we probably need to ponder Pilgrim from the Future's powerful brief axiom that moved us to post up this petition. Because as he so eloquently said, of all things, the most difficult to contain is the expansion of an idea. It is enough for the truth to appear just once to a single mind. And from that moment, nothing can prevent it spreading until it lights up the world. For whatever is truer will come to light, and whatever is better will ultimately become reality. So, rather than coming out, I'm just going to finish the last part, and then we can go back to the discussion. So, we can very definitely look forward to building on this discussion, because beginning in February, the Living Experiment YouTube channel will begin to produce a weekly broadcast that will feature not so famous, fascinating guests, continuous ongoing reports on the latest breakthrough research in the ever-expanding field of human potential, as well as the latest news for, from, and about the international peace community. And also around that time, our listeners will also be able to order the Living Experiments to Hell with War face mask. And hopefully, they'll also stick around long enough to hear the fascinating story of just exactly where that particular phrase comes from. Now, chief producer of the program is here this morning. She was also the primary co-editor of the Pictorial Guide to the Past and Future Shadow History of the United States. And she's the perfect fit for this particular podcast because she's currently pursuing an English major degree with the primary focus on writing for new media. My youngest daughter also just happens to be highly talented gold and silver recipient of the Milwaukee Press Club's 2019 awards for excellence in journalism, as well as other, even national awards. I still have things that she wrote in the 7th grade, so I'm not surprised at all. So, having said that, I'll close out by saying that until our prayers gather us together again, we can only ask that you remember us as well. In the meantime, God bless you and God bless America. I'm gonna stop the screen share. And we can turn the camera back on. Okay. That's a lot to chew on. But we have a few minutes, we're way ahead of schedule. Actually, there's only 15 minutes left.
It's perfect. I think it's perfect. It looks like Tex has his hand up.
Thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate Lauren Johnson. Félicitations for being who you are and for all the great achievements and all the great work that you're doing. And I'd like to congratulate Brother Zachary. As they say, judge the tree by the fruit it bears. So I guess we'll discover a lot more qualities in you. Thank you. Now, Théâtre des Chardins is generally known by the population at large for a quote related to love. That the day that humanity will discover love and put love in service, it will be like rediscovering fire. What's his name? The other person who you
Peter
mentioned.
Sorokin. Peter Sorokin.
Yes, yes. But here in Montreal, we have the site of Expo 67. And on that site, we have the Cosmodome, which was built by Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller is also known for having said that we need to go from weaponry to livingry, that we need to mobilize the technology, the science, so that we can live, humanity can live sustainably and everyone can flourish. Brother Zach, you mentioned that, sorry, I said Brother Zach, I mean, I'm shortening, you know, my name is short, Tex, so
That's fine. That's fine.
I have the tendency to shorten. So Brother Zachary, you mentioned that love is not a feeling, definitely. And I think this is where humanity has gone astray, in that we have focused too much on the pleasant sentiments of love, on the pleasures of love, and we have forgotten that love is a dynamic. Love is a bond. Love is the bond in atoms. Love is the bond in molecules. I mean, love is the bond in nature, is what keeps us all together, you know. Now, I think the time has come for us to visualize what, as a humanity, we can do. And when I say visualize, we need to also strategize. And we're talking about the elimination of war. To eliminate war, we have to foster thrivability on the planet. That is, that people individually can flourish and that communities can have a sense of prosperity, tangible prosperity, and that prosperity can be sustainable while we you know, we look after the whole ecosystem, humanity included, and peace. Now, to remove the impediments to a more caring humanity, to fully cultivate livingry on the planet, we need to empower, another word for love, which I believe it's there's two words actually, collaborative solidarity. Now, solidarity is bonding. Collaborative is coming together to actually synergize and build something. Now, we have the technology. We are now in a dynamic of collaborative solidarity by participating in this little forum online, little forum with great hopes, if only for me. But I mean, we see the potential of the technology. And I believe that we can have the, how can I say, we can organize. There's a need for citizens. Like, partisan politics is not the best way to organize, but we have to work with partisan politics. This is where I feel the book written by the 91-year-old Honorable Douglas Rush, in terms of hope for human security in the era of incoming President Biden, needs to be looked at seriously, because there's a need to strategize. Now, to abolish wars, there's a ban on biological weapons. There's a ban on chemical weapons. We've been talking about a ban on nuclear weapons. And a lot of countries, including Canada, has been dragging its feet. Douglas Rush, Senator Rush, has been involved internationally in trying to foster entente agreements among nations. In the past, he was also at the UN. But I think now with the technology, we need to be able to strategize and mobilize citizens to effectively come together in solidarity and collaborate, that we have the shift required in our humanity to have a peaceful, thrivable planet. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that Brother Tex just mentioned that somehow we're going to have to catch the wave of history to move this into a reality. Annie and I talk about coincidence all the time. Now, the day after we posted the petition to the internet, Catholic Reporter. Now, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not even a Christian, but I respect the church. I have a great deal of respect for the church. The Catholic Church is making a dramatic shift at this time because of the Pope who is in office right now. He recently did a, it wasn't an encyclical, it was a major position paper called, I don't want to say it wrong, Fratelli Tutti, where he moved toward moving the church away from the just war theory. This was critical. And that moved the Catholic Reporter to encourage him to offer up a new encyclical that would mandate that the church water down the just war or de-escalate the just war theory and replace it again with the Sermon on the Mount as the primary means for responding to the threat of war and violence, which has tremendous implications. The author of the article that we quoted said this would be equivalent to setting off a tsunami. Imagine 1 billion people on the planet having mandated that nonviolence and the mandates of the Sermon on the Mount, turning the other cheek and loving thy enemy, be the standard for governments, organizations, and social institutions responding to provocation. There's never been a better opportunity to move the human family forward. So I'm grateful and very excited to be alive in this day and time. And our hope is to be able to make some small contribution toward moving the human family forward. So.
I'm absolutely sure that it will, Zachary. I loved the quote that you gave there about, I think it was from Teilhard that, once an idea is out there, there's nothing that will stop it if it's true and good. And I had to think how true that is for everything that Teilhard taught and everything that Martin Luther King Jr. did as well, and how those seeds were planted in so many people. And the more we have that collaborative solidarity that Tex was talking about together, you know, Teilhard also famously wrote, "Everything that rises must converge." And so much of his writing was devoted to that our individual efforts come together and create that critical mass. I did want to recognize, we had Stephen join us a while back. I don't know if Stephen has anything he would like to comment on at this point. Just wanted to welcome him and recognize him. And if not, then we'll just continue what we're doing. I love.
Okay.
I think Karen always has something to add. Come on, Karen. Come on, Karen.
I always have something to say. And oh, thank you, Stephen is here to support Zach. He put in the chat. I simply, it just moved me so much, Zachary, when you said, you know, we've never been in a better moment to move the human family forward. So I am grateful to, you know, you mentioned how you and Annie talk about coincidences or, you know, synchronicities, being in the moment. And that's really how Annie and I connected. And then she connected me into Zachary. And now I feel like I have a new family member in my life. And, you know, Tex joining on these calls. So this is us moving our family forward in love, being love. And I just love how it was pointed out earlier, you know, building beloved community begins with being love, loving ourselves, and allowing ourselves to be loved, receiving it.
If Stephen is who I think he is, this was actually my best friend in high school. He lived down the street from me in high school. And I sent him an invitation to the workshop, and I'm delighted and honored that he's here, and couldn't be happier. He's my best friend. Imagine that. Old buddies. Yeah, you're right. So thank you again. This is a wonderful way to wrap up this workshop. Karen, I will be at your session this afternoon. And Lauren, I'm gonna come get you as soon as we close out the workshop. So I'll be over in a minute. Steve, thank you so much for showing up this morning and being here to share with us. And Tex, I feel like Karen, that we've been blessed with a new family member this morning. And you made such a wonderful contribution to our workshop this morning. I believe heaven gathered us here this morning. There's a force bigger than us at work. And there's a force bigger than us that brought myself and Annie together. We talk about coincidence all the time. So I want to thank our host once again. She's someone that I've grown to love and admire. I admire her heart. I admire her devotion to the betterment of the human family. And I'm honored to be her friend and co-worker. And I just want to thank you again. So God bless this group. And this is going to be the beginning. I believe we're going to work more together as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zachary. It's been so inspiring to see everything that you have poured yourself into, and it's absolutely what we need to bring us all forward. And this beloved community that's gathered here, I thank each and every one of you for being here. Voices heard and not your presence is felt. And it has been an intimate group, but we've talked about cosmic love as well. So thank you, everyone, and looking forward to everything else that I think Karen has something else to.
Question. What is the best way for us to, to be on awareness for the May 1st Life and Lasting Legacy of Teilhard de Chardin? Where will we find out more on how to participate in that?
Well, we'll be back in touch through the conversions.
Okay.
So that's a natural fit. So why don't we just start from there?
Perfect.
Starting from home. You know.
And then I think you said that it would probably be posted. You said there's a page, Facebook page. So I'm imagining there might be information on there.
There will be.
Okay.
We'll do an event notification from there.
Thank you.
And it would be very helpful if you all would go to Living Experiment YouTube page, check out the videos and become subscribers. That way you'll know about everything we're doing. Everything will go out from there, among other things. It'll go out from there and the webpage and the Facebook page. So
The living experiment. Let's do it.
All right. Beautiful. This is a beloved community.
Right. So
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then Annie, you can stop the live.